Welcome to HopSkipDrive's module on working with riders with disabilities, and thank you for your participation. Since all riders who are able to adhere to HopSkipDrive's standard of conduct, either independently or with the help of an aide, are eligible to use the HopSkipDrive platform, you may have the opportunity to transport riders with disabilities. To help you in meeting the needs of all riders, this module will cover best practices and considerations for working with riders with disabilities. The goal of this module is to help care drivers anticipate the potential needs of riders, feel comfortable in working with riders with disabilities, and to understand the requirements relating to accessibility while using the HopSkipDrive app. Let's start with an overview. Did you know that roughly 20% of Americans report having some form of a disability? That's 1 out of every 5 people. Although you may be surprised by that statistic, the term disability is broad. Disabilities can range from physical to cognitive or emotional impairments and can vary significantly in terms of their attributes. It is important to first recognize that the needs of individuals are incredibly diverse and to confront any preconceived notions you may have about individuals with disabilities. The reality is that a rider's disability may or may not be apparent, and many riders with disabilities can be transported through the use of a standard vehicle with minimal accommodation. Let's talk about the basics. HopSkipDrive enforces a strict anti-discrimination policy, meaning no user of the platform, whether a care driver, a rider, or a ride arranger, can discriminate against any other user of the platform on the basis of any protected class, including disability status. Because HopSkipDrive collects information about known disabilities and accommodations from ride arrangers and communicates that information to you in the ride notes in advance of a ride, a care driver should never be in the position to deny a rider due to the rider's disability. Meaning, for example, HopSkipDrive would never match a care driver with a rider who uses a fixed frame wheelchair unless that care driver has a wheelchair accessible vehicle. If, for some reason, you arrive to pick up a rider and believe you are unable to accommodate that rider, please call HopSkipDrive Safe Ride Support immediately at 844-HOP-SKIP. In some cases, reasonable accommodations may need to be provided to a rider. These can range from accommodating a service animal or not playing music during a ride due to the rider's sound sensitivity. Any established accommodations will be communicated to you prior to the ride. Regardless of disability status, all riders are expected to adhere to HopSkipDrive's rules relating to safety. If a rider violates HopSkipDrive's rules during a ride, please let us know. Safety is our #1 priority. When working with all riders, including riders with any form of disability, communication is key. Always be kind, courteous, and respectful in how you communicate with the rider. Be cognizant of the language you use. For example, the term handicapped is outdated, nor should there be a need for you to refer to a rider as handicapped or disabled. You can address a rider with a disability just as you would any other rider. Be observant. You may be able to learn a lot about how to best work with your rider by watching how others interact with the rider. If you don't know how to help, ask questions. There are plenty of opportunities for doing so, ranging from asking questions in advance of the ride, asking questions to a designated aide, or asking questions directly to the rider where developmentally appropriate. Listen to the instructions provided in the ride notes and the preferences of the rider or ride organizer. Lastly, let the rider know you understand the rider's needs. Showing some understanding goes a long way. Now let's discuss some of the accommodations you may experience as a care driver, starting with service animals. Service animals are used by individuals with disabilities for a variety of reasons, ranging from visual impairments to emotional support and many reasons in between. Care drivers are required by law to transport service animals. Often, it will be visibly apparent that the service animal is needed for a disability. Most service animals know exactly how to help their owner and will load into the vehicle easily. In case of inclement weather, it may be helpful to keep a spare beach towel or sheet in your vehicle to protect the interior. In very rare occasions, it may not be readily apparent whether the animal is a registered service animal. It is important to remember that, pursuant to the Americans with Disabilities Act, you cannot ask for confirmation of the animal's service registration. Instead, there are only 2 questions that you are permitted to ask pursuant to the ADA. 1, Is the animal a service animal required because of a disability? 2, what work or task has the animal been trained to perform? But again, if you ever arrive to a ride and have questions, please call HopSkipDrive support. Deaf and hard of hearing. In some cases, you may have the opportunity to transport riders who are deaf or hard of hearing. Most likely, these riders will be accompanied by an aide who can help you to appropriately identify the rider using the code word and rider's date of birth. When working with a rider who is deaf or hard of hearing, the following are best practices to consider. 1, make eye contact. One way to do this is by positioning yourself in front of the rider when communicating. This may help direct the rider's attention to you. Your rider may also know how to read lips. 2, if necessary, you can switch to visual communication like communicating through a notepad. Please do not, however, do this while driving. If there is a need to write something down, please pull over to a safe place. 3, be patient and approach with a smile. Most individuals are sensitive to visual cues, and this may be particularly true for a rider who is deaf or hard of hearing. 4, if acceptable to the rider and ride arranger, use touch like a light tap on the shoulder or arm to get the attention of the rider. 5, and unless the ride arranger has other preferences, speak directly to the rider and not the rider's aide. Blind and visually impaired. As a care driver, you may also have the opportunity to transport riders who are blind or visually impaired. When doing so, consider the following. 1, oftentimes, depending on the extent of the rider's disability, a blind or visually impaired rider will be introduced to you by the ride arranger or an aide. 2, if the rider is unaccompanied, you may ask the rider if they would like you to guide them into or out of the vehicle and offer an arm or elbow. In many cases, a ride arranger will provide instructions or preferences. 3, be descriptive. It may be helpful to your rider to describe surroundings and location during the ride so that the rider feels safe. This may be especially true while the rider is getting into or out of the vehicle to ensure the rider is aware of the setting. 4, lastly, be observant. Pay special attention to your surroundings to ensure that the rider is safe while walking through parking lots, crossing streets, and getting to the front door. Wheelchairs and assistive devices. Some riders require use of a wheelchair or other assistive device. Riders who require use of a fixed frame wheelchair or non-collapsible mobility device can request a wheelchair accessible vehicle through HopSkipDrive. Many wheelchairs and assistive devices, however, can be folded and stored in the trunk of a regular passenger vehicle. The rider or ride arranger may provide specific instructions for how to do so, but generally, most collapsible wheelchairs can be easily folded by pulling up on the middle seat and removing the footrest. If you are ever unsure how to handle mobility equipment, just ask. Your rider may be well aware how to collapse the equipment, as would be the ride arranger or an aide. Listen to their instructions and protect the equipment as if it were their own. Autism spectrum disorder. The first and most important thing to keep in mind when working with a rider with autism is that the needs and capabilities of individuals with autism vary greatly. Although autism can manifest in a variety of different ways, the core characteristics are repetitive behavior and challenges with social communication. That said, the autism spectrum is broad. In some cases, you may not be able to detect at all that a rider has a form of autism, while in others, you may be provided specific instructions for how to accommodate the needs of the rider. When it is known that a rider is on the autism spectrum, be sure to follow any instructions provided by the ride arranger. The arranger knows how to best meet the rider's needs and will likely lay out exactly what the rider requires in order to have a successful ride. Riders with significant needs may be accompanied by an aide, in which case the aide can also provide specific instructions. Some other common tips for working with riders with autism spectrum disorder include the following. 1, individuals with autism often prefer repetitive and predictable behavior. Be cautious whenever taking different routes to a pre-scheduled destination, as last-minute changes or surprises may cause unease for a rider with autism. 2, be mindful in how you communicate and use clear language. Individuals with autism tend to interpret words literally and may not pick up on figurative language. Additionally, it is important to speak and act in a calm and respectful manner, as your rider may react to the verbal and nonverbal cues you are conveying. Finally, avoid sensory overload. Lighting, sounds, and smells may distract or cause distress to a rider with autism. Intellectual disabilities. The term intellectual disability can refer to a wide variety of cognitive and behavioral deficiencies. For some individuals, these characteristics will be mild, whereas others may have more significant needs. As such, it is difficult to generalize the needs and traits of individuals with intellectual disabilities. If a rider with an intellectual disability is capable of riding independently, the ride arranger may provide instructions for working with that rider. Riders with more significant needs may be accompanied by an aide who can assist in ensuring that the rider is transported safely. Now let's recap. Although the needs of riders are diverse and no two riders are the same, it is important to remember these 4 items. First, always be kind, courteous, and respectful in how you communicate with riders with disabilities, and all riders for that matter. Second, if you don't know how to assist a rider, ask the ride arranger, an aide, or the rider where appropriate. If you have questions about the rider's care during a ride, feel free to contact the ride arranger via the app. Otherwise, please contact the HopSkipDrive Safe Ride Support Team at 844-HOP-SKIP. Remember, you cannot deny a passenger due to the rider's disability or need for a service animal. And finally, if you are ever in a situation where you are unsure whether you can accommodate a rider, please call HopSkipDrive Support immediately. Thank you for your dedication to serving riders with diverse needs. If you have any questions, please contact HopSkipDrive. See you on the road.